Deliverance II.
So developed by Warhorse Studios and released in 2025, Kingdom Come Deliverance II is a first-person RPG and hyper-realistic experience that takes place in our real-life history back in the medieval period. So I'm no historian, and I'm not going to pretend like I know a whole lot about the events in which this game takes place, but I'm just going to provide you the context that is provided to the player, and just remember that it's based on real historical events. Alright, so the game takes place in 1403 in the Kingdom of Bohemia, which is now the modern-day Czech Republic. So there's a man, Charles IV, who has a long and prosperous reign over this kingdom as the Holy Roman Emperor, but after his death, his son, Wenceslas IV, is set to take over. Now the problem with Wenceslas is he doesn't take the job of being king very seriously, and so he goes on to piss off a bunch of the nobles and the papacy of the area. So they eventually get sick enough of him that they conspire with his half-brother Sigismund of Hungary to basically usurp the throne, and this leads to Sigismund taking Wenceslas hostage. So with Wenceslas out of the way, Sigismund uses this opportunity to send his armies into Bohemia and basically conquer any cities that don't pledge allegiance to him as the new ruler, which initiates the conflict that we now know today as the Bohemian Civil War. So for the specific events of this game, it takes place immediately after the events of the first game, but you don't have to have necessarily played the first game to kind of get a good idea of what's going on. It will just help make a lot more sense of a lot of individual situations and flashbacks and whatnot. So long and short of the first game, you play as Henry. He's a blacksmith's son, but not really. He's actually the son of a local noble, but he was raised by the blacksmith and his mother. One day after making a sword with his stepfather for his real father, who, by the way, is actually a supporter of Wenceslas, his village of Scouts is attacked by the Hungarian soldiers and burned to the ground, and his parents are killed in front of him. So begins Henry's quest to avenge his parents and retrieve the sword that he and his father made, and important to the events of KCD2, he eventually befriends a local lord's nephew, Hans Capon, and enters into his service. So after a few adventures, the game basically ends with the cousin of King Wenceslas organizing a bunch of Bohemian nobles against Sigismund, but they're requiring more support, so he sends Hans Capon and his new bodyguard, Henry, to the distant lands of Trotsky, where they have to deliver a letter to the lord there to see if he will support them. And that's where the game picks up. Henry and Hans and all their company entering to the outskirts of Trotsky and just absolutely broing down the whole way there. So right off the bat, the relationship between Henry, who's a low-born, humble commoner, and Hans, who's a high-born, arrogant nobleman, is just excellent. They're kind of like medieval frat bros. They're just constantly poking jabs at each other, and they're talking about women and drinking and sharing stories and having pissing contests about who's better at what. It's always really funny. So before arriving to Trotsky, your band decides to camp in a spot that's not so great, and you end up getting attacked by bandits, which we learn have been running rampant throughout the lands ever since the chaos of the war ensued. Henry and Hans are the only ones to survive this attack, and they end up losing the letter and everything else, including the clothes on their back, and so begins your quest to retrieve the letter and gain an audience with von Berghoff before Sigismund's armies can march too deep into Bohemia. So KCD2 is long as hell, with a myriad of B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P plot lines all throughout. Everything from some medieval Ocean's 11 type mission to the whole mission of Henry trying to get his sword back, to playing as a drunken priest from the first game who's trying to rally some support from local noblemen. And it's all admittedly very well done, but I just couldn't help but think there was a lot of fluff in this game. Quality fluff, well-written fluff, but a lot of fluff. So a saying I like to think about when I'm judging something like this is a perfect piece of art doesn't need anything added to it, but you can't take anything away from it either. And the problem with KCD2 is I feel like there's a lot that could have at least been made optional if not gotten rid of entirely, and the major plot points of the story would have been understood all the same. Again though, it's all very well done, and it effectively explores themes of the cost of vengeance and what it means to be righteous throughout the story, which makes a lot of sense because of the heavy-handed influence Christianity has in this world. Yeah, I gotta say, I've played so many games that have their own made-up religions and deities and cults that basically define various factions, so it's really weird playing a game that uses real-world religions. A final thing I want to acknowledge on the story is just how great the writing is for all the characters and how it makes all of them grounded and relatable, and just the overall tone of the story has got this medieval comedy feel to it. It's frequently very, very funny. Through every encounter you have friendly banter, casual and overt flirting, political discourse, drunken babbling, and all kinds of other quirky character traits that really make every NPC in this game feel like a unique individual. Yeah, and it also helps too that the protagonist, Henry, is much less wooden of a character when compared to the first game. I mean, really, in the first game, he was a big, old, uninteresting burger. Though I do gotta say, the gameplay lets you be as good or as evil as you'd like to be, but believing Henry is an evil character in this game just feels impossible. He's just way too dorky and seems to be contradicted in all the cutscenes and whatnot. I mean, I guess you could see him as an evil character in that evil serial killer kind of way where he's just too polite and too goofy and there's just something off about him, but beyond that, it's kind of hard to believe it. But honestly, none of that really matters because, in my mind, Henry's story is just a vehicle to guide us through the actual more interesting story of the Bohemian War and the politics behind it. Alright, but that brings me to the gameplay. First of all, I gotta say, KCD 2 plays exactly like KCD 1, but if you just polished off all the rough edges of the first game, which is very much appreciated. I really love how the story elements are intertwined with the gameplay. Like, for example, there's this recurring theme throughout the game where characters judge other characters based on how they're dressed and how they present themselves, and the same thing occurs in the game in your interactions with the characters, where if you're covered in mud, blood, or you're drunken, or anything like that, you're going to have poorer outcomes in your interactions. Yeah, I gotta say, it's a major part of this game that you're constantly washing your clothes off of blood and grime, or changing your clothes altogether for a more charismatic appearance. Clothes obviously also impact your armor level, as well as your visibility and noise level, and this game has this really convenient feature where you can basically save 3 outfits. So what I ended up doing is having 1 combat outfit, 1 stealth outfit, and 1 charisma outfit. Also, just like the first game, the game is full of these mundane tasks that you have to perform that, for some reason, are kind of cathartic and soothing to play. Like, seriously, I can't quite put my finger on as to why I didn't mind these sections so much. They feel like they should be really boring, but I don't know, maybe it's because there's like an animation for every movement you have. It's not just looking at something and pressing a button and it just goes into your inventory. You're actually constantly reaching, picking something up. It's affecting how fast you move and whatnot. It's, for some reason, just works for me. And this also applies to typical RPG utilities like blacksmithing or alchemy. It's not just going up into a menu and picking what you want to craft and then just pressing a button and it gets crafted. It's actually like a mini game every single time. You actually require skill and patience in order to craft a good potion or to hone your sword perfectly. Like, I gotta give credit where credit's due. I'm not a very patient person whatsoever, but this game really forces you to be patient and methodical as a player, and I didn't hate it at all. And the leveling up system in this game is one of the most unique I've ever experienced. It's a lot like Oblivion, where you level up specific attributes just by using them over and over again. And every time you level up one of those attributes, you get to select one of multiple perks for that attribute tree, and it really allows you to basically customize your Henry the way you want them and have a very personalized experience. I also really appreciate that the perks have tangible impact when you apply them. It's like immediate that you notice the usefulness of them, and it's just fantastic. Now, the combat of KCD 2 is probably going to be the most contentious point. You're Henry, you're a blacksmith's son, you're not a soldier, but you do have some God-gifted talent with a sword, but you're just not the most capable warrior in the land. So yeah, fighting a few lightly armored bandits here and there, that's a breeze, it's no problem, but the moment you fight a group of people, or you got one guy in front of you who's heavily armored and got a shield and whatnot, it feels nigh on impossible half the time. There are a plethora of different melee and ranged weapons that you can get throughout the game that have their own fighting styles associated with them, but no matter what you're using, most of it consists of either dodging or parrying at the right time and then choosing the right direction to swing your weapon so you can land a hit. A quick funny note on this game, the sound effect of actually landing a hit is the most unsatisfying noise. It literally sounds like punching a pillow, but it's also so satisfying because it's so damn hard to land a hit. Ranged weapons are really slow and cumbersome and take a long time to prepare, so they're mostly used as like a surprise attack weapon. They're not very good when you actually get in the heat of combat, but when you get good with a bow, at least, it's a lot of fun. To sum it up, it's just clunky as all get out, but that feels intentional. Like, the goal is to be as realistic as possible, so I can't really knock the game too much for it. But there's just some combat scenarios that are mandatory and were really frustrating because you either had to get lucky or cheese the encounter to get through it, and yeah, I was just getting really annoyed by that sometimes. There is a heavy survival aspect to this game as well, where you gotta manage your health, your stamina, your sleep, your hunger, your bleeding, and even your drunkenness. And all of these have their associated benefits and consequences that really contribute to the realism of the game and just make the moment-to-moment gameplay so much more engaging. I mean, overall, I gotta say, it's a game that just embodies the genre of role-playing game probably better than any other game I've ever played. Alright, so the quality of this game is where it really deserves the most praise. You can just tell how much painstaking effort was put into every single detail of this game's world. Like, sure, the graphics and animations are the best I've ever seen, but just the sheer size of the game, the complexity of the game's systems, the NPCs, the wildlife, the weather systems, and the way everything just works so cohesively, it's just insanely impressive. I mean, you just know it was such a massive and difficult undertaking for the developers, and I just really feel like they deserve a little praise for just how well it all turned out. I think the only real gripe I have about both KCD 1 and 2 is how crimes were reported and how they're remembered by the NPCs. I mean, dude, there were so many times where I made sure I was not visible to anyone, then I knock someone out or I steal something. Still, no one's calling me a criminal or anything. I leave the town, I come back a few hours later, and I'm immediately pointed out as a criminal. Really frustrating. Sure, I had some glitches throughout my playthrough, but nothing more than I would expect from any other open world game, and it runs really smooth for its scale and quality visuals, at least on my playthrough on the PS5. I mean, the most concise way to explain this game really is it's as if a history textbook were actualized into a well-crafted game. I mean, hell, you get that from the game's codex explaining real historical events, characters, technologies, languages, areas. It's like reading straight from a textbook. I mean, dude, even the music is thematically in line with the times, with everything sounding like you're either waltzing around a Renaissance fair or combat encounters being highlighted by the sound of war drums. It's just really appreciated how everything tries to be as historically accurate as possible. So without further ado, the story is Henry's story amongst a much larger one, and I would give it a 7 out of 10. The clunky but complex gameplay I would give an 8 out of 10, and the sheer quality of this game I gotta give it a 9 out of 10. It's just very impressive. This gives KCD 2 an overall ranking of 24 out of 30 and my new number 1 on my rankings list. Yeah, it's a really tough game to grade because I know how much effort went into it, and it's objectively a better game than a lot of other games I enjoy, but I admittedly just got so tired of this dragged out pace and just really rushed to beat it at the end. However, if I were a kid renting this at the local rental store, I wouldn't even bother renting it anymore. I would just go buy it. It's just worth picking it up and exploring this well-actualized world as much as possible. So, thank you all again for watching. I'm really trying to build this channel up into something more, something that people can watch and get through their days with, just like a lot of other YouTubers have done for me. So, if you like what you watch, please hit the like button. I'd very much appreciate it. If you have any thoughts on things I said or any ideas for games you'd like me to cover in the future, leave a comment. That'd be awesome. And if you want to see stuff I do going forward, please subscribe. Help me build this thing. Peace.